name that refers to a deep cutting or division. We are encouraged to keep in mind the admonition of St. Andrew of Caesarea. He says, "May our way of life in God become the cause of dejection in the demons and gladness for the angels, so that, in common with them, we might give thanks for the victory." Amen.
Dr. Edith M. Humphrey is the William F. Orr Professor of New Testament at Pittsburgh Theological Seminary. A Lamp for Today is a listener-supported presentation of Ancient Faith Radio. Christ is in our midst. He is and ever shall be. You're listening to Ancient Faith Radio, timeless Christianity 24 hours a day.
The ancient faith for the modern world. This is Ancient Faith Radio.
Welcome to Live with the Louhs with your hosts, Father Nicholas and Dr. Roxanne Louh, where we will connect our Orthodox faith to day-to-day living and relationships to our family, our work, and our view of ourselves. Father Nicholas is the priest at St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church in Jacksonville, and Dr. Roxanne is a licensed clinical psychologist who uses her extensive training in private practice. Questions are welcome by calling 855-237-2346. That's 855-237-2346. Here now is Father Nicholas and Dr. Roxanne.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Live with the Louhs. My name is Father Nicholas Louh, and I'm the parish priest at St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church right here in Jacksonville, Florida. We're so honored that you're joining us on this exciting evening of June 21st. You know, if this is the first time that you've been joining us with Live with the Louhs, let me tell you a little bit about our show. It's a show that marries both faith and psychology to kind of give you some practical steps to grow in your walk of faith every single day. I really believe at our core that we are all about practical Christianity, that we want to make sure that not only do we give you a message on a Sunday morning in a sermon, but we also want to give you the tools to apply it on a Monday morning. And so Live with the Louhs airs every single Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Before we go into tonight's topic, I want to encourage all of you to stay connected to us by joining all of our social media platforms. Friends, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, all under the headings of The Louhs. In fact, if you're wanting to listen to some of our recent sermons, you can go to our YouTube channel, The Louhs, and listen to all of the sermons that we've given over the last several years. In fact, our show is currently being broadcast live on our Louhs Facebook page, as well as Ancient Faith's Facebook page. And if you're one of these people like us who love to just read inspirational messages, we started a couple of years ago to send out these daily words of encouragement through our website, and it's thelouhs.com. That's LOUHS.com. If you are interested in receiving one of our daily messages that come every single morning at 7 a.m. in your inbox, simply go to thelouhs.com, click on that subscribe button, and all you have to do is put in your email address. And every day you're going to receive a message at 7 a.m. And also, I want to also encourage you all, if you're looking for a book to read over the summertime, just a book of renewal. As you all know, we published a book a couple of years ago called Renewing You, a priest, a psychologist, and a plan. You can find it here at Ancient Faith, who published the book, but it's also on audible.com as well as on Amazon. We actually recorded it in our own voices, all with the hope of just kind of inspiring you, and hopefully through our voices, it can motivate you in your own walk of faith. So again, that's Renewing You, a priest, a psychologist, and a plan. We also want to invite you to join the conversation tonight. Roxanne and I are firm believers that there's so much growth that happens in the conversation. So we welcome you to call us tonight at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-237-2346. You can email us a question at ask@ancientfaith.com. That's ask@ancientfaith.com. So let's get started. You know, friends, did you know that there are about 1.2 billion people in the world that are young adults? In fact, in this country, it represents close to 25% of our population. They're the most marketed demographic in our society. They yield a tremendous amount of influence on our society. They have access to more information at their fingertips than any other previous generation. They're truly an amazing demographic within our society. Yet they also represent a demographic that is struggling greatly. When you look at studies, mental health studies, you find that stress, anxiety, and worry are very pronounced within this demographic. In fact, one study I found stated that almost 31% of young adults have some sort of anxiety disorder. And during COVID, sadly, almost 48% had some sort of mental health struggle. So what do we need to know about our young generation? What are their struggles, their wants, their hopes? How do they transition from college to work life while at the same time living a godly faith? Tonight we wanted to do something that we've never done before, and we wanted to basically ask 3 young adults from all over our country to get answers to these and so many more questions. Let me introduce you to them. First, there's Jamie Zane. She grew up in Minnesota and attended St. George Antiochian Orthodox Church. She's graduated from Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa, with a major in finance and a minor in Spanish. She's been working in Polaris in Minnesota since 2017 in a variety of finance roles. There's also Deanna Colas. She grew up in Rochester, Minnesota, and is a member at St. Mary's Greek Orthodox Church in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She has a BA from the University of Minnesota in Sociology and Family Social Services, a master's in clinical health, mental health counseling from Loyola University in Chicago, and now she's working as a therapist in a partial hospitalization program treating adults with PTSD and trauma. And in her free time, she enjoys singing, reading, playing tennis, hiking and biking, and doing so many things outside. And finally, there's Lucas Postolos, who's an associate with Alvarez and Marcel in the restructuring practice and is based in Dallas, Texas. Lucas graduated from Southern Methodist University in 2017 with a degree in finance, and among several ministries of the church that Lucas is currently involved in, he's most recently was a conference coordinator for the Connect conference, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in October of 2021. So to Jamie, Deanna, and Lucas, welcome to Live with the Louhs.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, Father.
And thank you for everything you do.
Thank you so much for your beautiful words. Jamie, let's get started with you. The topic of this conversation is transitions in your 20s and 30s. And I know there's a lot of stress and worry that comes along with that, some anxiety as well. Each of you have different stories and different experiences. So when we say transitions through your 20s or 30s, what comes to your mind first?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question and for having us, Father. For me, I could talk about changing friendships. I could talk about starting work, being on the parish council as the youngest member. But, actually, I think today I want to share with the group my experience with chronic pain, because as I think about my young adult life, it's actually been the thing that has really shaped my faith more than anything else. About 3 years ago, I suddenly started having pain in my right foot, and the more I use my foot, the more it hurts. So I went to many doctors, from rheumatology to orthopedics, to chiropractic, and even to Rochester Mayo. And to this day, I still don't have an answer on what is causing that pain. And obviously that has been very frustrating for me. But, the reason that I share this example is because even if you don't have a situation similar to mine, I think every young adult faces, and really people at all ages, but I think specifically in your young adult life, you face some sort of challenge or suffering. And I think that often forces people to wrestle with, how they believe God fits into that. I think ultimately, for me, it's helping me grow in my dependence on God, which I'm not sure that I realized I needed to do that until this experience happened. So I'm happy to share more later, but that's actually the example that I would start out with.
And Deanna, tell us about what does that mean to you when we talk about transitions? What comes to your mind?
Yeah, when I think about transitions, the big one that I think helped me grow the most was actually when I transitioned from college to grad school. I moved from Minnesota to Chicago, so a much more diverse and active place. And there were a lot of things that changed for me that really pushed me to stay strong in my faith and have to grow in my faith. So one of those things was being around, like I said, more diverse people and people who didn't appreciate Christianity or actually had negative views of Christians or had stereotypes against us. So having to stay strong in that and be okay with people judging me for my faith, that was so important. And then also being far away from my family who had always driven me to church during college or been there to encourage me to attend and be part of groups. And all of a sudden I was on my own in a big city where I didn't have much experience. And so really having to say, okay, I have to find my own way to church and get myself into these Orthodox groups. And so really just forced me to take more ownership and get a little stronger in it than I had to before.
You know, Deanna, I want to kind of build on that. And if you're just joining Live with the Louhs, we are speaking with 3 young adults from around the country, really talking about where young adults are now. What are their needs, their hopes? How do they navigate and manage transitions? There's so many transitions going on in this specific demographics that we just want to dedicate a show to it. So we invite you to call in at 1-855-237-2346. If you're a young adult, we'd love to see and hear how you're transitioning as well. Again, that's 1-855-237-2346. You can also email us a question at ask@ancientfaith.com. That's ask@ancientfaith.com. But Deanna, you know, when you look at studies, and studies that oftentimes are shared within the church world, that the young adult age, the 18 to 35 age group, represents one of the largest demographics that ends up leaving the church. And statistics show that most of them do not come back to church after they have left during this 18 to 35-year-old age group. But there's also during this time where their faith is being challenged. And I loved how you shared a little bit earlier in your comments how you had to navigate having faith in an area and maybe among other people, maybe some of your friends or maybe just people that you were associating with, how you navigated your faith during that when so many people have access to information. They start questioning, they start challenging, they start leaving Christianity, they start doubting the faith. How did you stay, if you could speak to our listeners, how did you kind of stay navigated and focused on your faith during really that time when you were in an environment that may not have been so welcoming to it?
I think one of the parts that was most important for me was leaning on others that I knew and had in my life that were strong in the faith. You know, my parents who had always encouraged that and told me to stay strong in it, but also asking questions to my priests or other leaders in the church, because again, people around me were asking questions or saying, why do Christians believe this? How does this make sense in the Orthodox faith? And so I didn't always have the answers, and I started to question or get confused on some things too, but just always turning and asking and doing my best to understand what I could, I think helped a lot, because the Orthodox faith is so deep and there's always so many explanations behind everything, and it's so intentional. So really just drawing on that and staying focused on I can combine my Orthodox faith and it can fit into my world that I'm experiencing.
Yeah, it's that beauty of just being purposeful, and that I'm purposefully wanting to learn and to grow in your faith. Lucas, also, tell us what comes to mind when you think of the transitions, and maybe share an experience that you've had as well. How did you navigate that transition in your own life?
Sure. Well, I think I love that Jamie and Deanna and I kind of all thought of different things to hit on for this question. For me, I think about the obvious one, which is I transitioned from college to the workforce. And in doing that, I think most young adults have to become more selective with how they spend their time and what they give their energy to. And for me, I was devoting most of my energy every week to my job. And so what's left? What are you giving your energy to? And I think we're kind of trained in high school and college to do whatever is the most fun thing. And so for me, it was the realization that, just because something's fun, it's not going to make me joyful. And so not all things it's realizing that not all things are profitable, and deciding, how am I going to spend that time? Because I only have so much energy to give outside of my job.
I love that. I think, I love the maturity that all three of you have, and the desire and the intentionality that all of you have shown in wanting to keep your faith so much part of who you are and how you live out your faith. I also, just kind of building on this, is that, how do you find yourself, though, keeping your faith through that transition? Just in general, when you're looking at, especially, when we went through COVID, 2 years of really just being socially isolated. We were not only physically distant, but in many ways we were spiritually and societally distant. And how did you guys navigate that? How did you navigate that, not only in the transition that was, but also the transition of life? So let's start. Lucas, if you can kind of, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. I think I found myself keeping my faith by seeing where I was lacking. And
Hmm.
when I began I'm coming up on 5 years at my firm, and the whole 5 years has been full of me seeing where I'm lacking. And I think the church has provided me the best examples of virtue that I really need to succeed. And whether that's the humility of Christ and the saints, or it's the discipline and self control that I've learned through the church's teachings of
Hmm.
fasting. Right, like
Hmm.
those virtues are extremely helpful to me to be good at my job. And so that's part of the reason why I would say I've kept the faith, as you said.
Let me ask you, Jamie, building on what Lucas was just sharing. I mean, there's so many young adults, just like in every demographic. There's people that are connected to the church and connect and bring their faith with them, and then some that just kind of like sometimes just kind of check the box on a Sunday morning, or maybe not even engaged in the church. They're in name only engaged in a community, but not really truly engaged or intentional in their walk of faith. What how did you find yourself, keeping the faith during the transition that you face in life?
Yeah, Father, it can be really hard at times when you're going through a transition or a challenge. I think for me, having those teachings of the church, kind of similar to what Lucas was saying, and just knowing that this is what the church has taught for thousands of years, that I will, when I'm struggling, to read my Psalms, to try to stick to my daily, prayer rule. And when I'm not able to do that, to really, kind of what Deanna was saying, to lean on the people around me. I really think that we are made to be in community. Well, I just don't think that. I know that that's the
Mm-hmm.
truth. We
Mm-hmm.
need to be supported, when we're struggling, when we're transitioning, to have those people around me, both our family and our friends, people at our age. I think for me, having other young adult friends, like Deanna, who lives up here in the Twin Cities as well, it's someone that I can talk to and, rely on when I'm struggling to keep my faith.
Mm. And Deanna, I mean, I know you mentioned a little bit earlier about your own walk of faith, but maybe just talk a little bit about what are some of the daily things that you do to kind of keep your faith strong in your own life.
Similar to what Jamie said, my prayer rule, so regular prayer, in the morning, in the evening, or in the afternoon if I'm able to, is so important. And reading spiritual or religious books. And I think one of the main things that's really helped me is I've been so happy and blessed that a lot of the church communities I've been a part of have a lot of events happening, whether it's for young adults or for the parish in general.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie and I are in an Orthodox book club with a few other Orthodox women. And so those little things build up to kind of fill my life with Orthodoxy and keep me connected. And they really fill my cup and help me feel connected with other Orthodox and keep me reminded of how important the faith is, and to help me again deal with any challenges that might come up.
You're listening to Live with the Louhs, and today we're speaking with 3 young adults from around the country about the transitions that young adults experience. This represents one of the largest demographics in our world. Over 1 billion young adults live in this world, and a huge percentage of them in our country. And we wanted to dedicate a show to truly try to find out what young adults are in needs, what are their hopes, their aspirations, especially when they go through these transitions of life. This particular age group goes through a tremendous amount of transition from high school to college to their work, potentially getting married. How do they navigate that, and how do they look for that right person, and what are the stresses and the anxieties and the worries that they go through? So we've dedicated a show to that, and we're so grateful that Jamie and Deanna and Lucas are with us. We'd love to hear from you, though. If you're a young adult or really just have a question for these young adults, please feel free to call us at 1-855-237-2346. 1-855-237-2346, or email us a question at ask@ancientfaith.com. We're also broadcasting simultaneously on our Facebook page, as well as Ancient Faith's Facebook page. So go to the Louhs Facebook page, that's Louhs, and you can also share some comments about or any questions that you may have as well. Kind of building on what all 3 of you mentioned, I think it's I kind of want to diverge a little bit just to talk about how each of you spoke about how the church was so central in your lives. And I love that. But for many Christians, and especially for many young adults, they may not be as connected to the church as you, all three of you are. What advice would you give to a priest or maybe even a pastor who's just tuning in, listening to our show tonight, or a youth director? What would you say would be, or things that you would love to see that are almost these like non-negotiables, if you will, that you would recommend that every parish should have in welcome, and how, and using your own experience of how you felt welcomed, how you felt challenged and inspired to want to grow, to learn, to meet? What would you say are some of those non-negotiables that every church leader should know and should be implementing in their church? And so I'd like to start first of all with Lucas, if you could kind of give us your thoughts on that.
Sure. Well, I like the visuals, and Father Evan Armitage talks about flipping the funnel.
Mm-hmm.
He says, when you're a parish and it's not our job to sort and to filter. So if we can flip the funnel so that we bring everyone in, God will do the rest. And so I think being as welcoming as you can, greeting new visitors, finding common ground, right? Building bridges, ways to connect with them, and developing relationships and creating an environment where they can ask questions. That to me is sort of the primary objective in order to be able to welcome people in. And feel free to redirect if that's not sort of what you were getting at.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think that, there's a Pew Research study that found that when people come to a church, what they look for the most is the worship, we would call our liturgy, a dynamic worship, so a worship that engages the people in the worship and in the liturgy, as we call it, the work of the people, an amazing music, choirs, and sermons. And sermons are very important. And finally, are the ministries, practical ministries that people can apply in their everyday life. So those are things that you've definitely nailed one of those, Lucas, that are so important. And I'm sure that all of those you guys experienced. But just to kind of build on what Lucas shared, Deanna, what are your thoughts? What are your, if there's a priest listening or a pastor, what would you tell them that are things that spoke to you, helped guide you in your own walk of faith, that you would say, these are things that I think every parish should have?
Yeah, I agree with what Lucas said about the parish needing to be welcoming. Like I said, I moved to Chicago. I didn't know anyone, so it was so important when people greeted me at a church I had never been to where I didn't know anyone, invited me to join ministries. But one other thing I think is so important is for priests or people in the church to listen to young adults and hear what their experiences in the world, and to try to be as non-judgmental as possible of that. Of course, if there's things they're saying that aren't correct or aren't in line with the church, right, they can have a conversation about that. But I think to listen first, have that foundation, and then build off of that and engage in conversation. Because I know I've had this experience, and from what I've talked with a lot of other people our age, we question, we're thinking about a lot of different things. And if we're kind of shut down right away, that can feel really hard, and it can make it hard to come back or keep wanting to engage in that conversation. So, but that conversation is so beautiful. So much can come from that.
I love that. That's so powerful, so powerful. Listening and welcoming. And Jamie, your thoughts?
Both Lucas and Deanna had great things to say. On the welcoming front, I think it's just really important to meet people where they are. Each person comes to a parish with a different life experience and may not be at the same place in their faith journey. And so just remember, I think just keeping that in mind, as priests and leaders in the church, that someone may be still grappling with certain things, and let them grapple in the church with those things. And then I would also just add, this is not as much on the priest, but also is something that they can encourage their parishioners to do. I would say the place that I formed the most connection at church is not during coffee hour. It's by reaching out to someone and having coffee with them, or if someone invites me over for dinner or something, is a really good way to get to know people on a more deeper level. Coffee hour can be so stressful. You're, hello, hi, nice to see you, and so just both those listening to take advantage of the opportunity to get to know your fellow parishioners outside of church, and priests to try to encourage that and have them do that.
That's guys, that's such great advice. I think that's going to be so practical for all of us, whether we're parish leaders or just members of a church family, to hear that. And I think it's going to be so beautiful for all of us to hear. Kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, for all of you, was there a defining moment for you during this transition when you realized how important your faith is? And I'd love to hear from you, Jamie, first.
I'm not sure if there was one defining moment, but I think over the last several years, it's become clearer and clearer to me that there's little in this life that is sure, little in this life that we can be certain about, or really that we can control. As a young person, I feel like I was very self-sufficient. I always got things done without a lot of help from other people. And I came upon certain situations where I really had to relinquish control and know that ultimately, only God is sure. Only God is, the one thing in our life that is sure. And so I think that this realization for me it can be painful at times, but is so important and has helped really define my faith. Just to really be able to lean into truly trusting and depending on God. I'm still working on it, but I think just getting down that path and working on that has been critical and has been a big realization for me on this transitionary young adult time.
Beautiful. And Lucas, love to hear your thoughts.
Sure. I think if there's one defining moment, not that it was like some sort of magical event or anything, but what I look back to is a few years ago, I was looking forward to a family event, and I hadn't seen my family in a while, and I was really excited to see my sisters, and I remember getting there, just a weekend event, and the whole weekend was just a mess, and we just did not get along, and I was so aggravated with her, and it just made me realize that how broken I was as a person and as a brother. I was not the brother that I wanted to be, and leaving that weekend really being disappointed with myself and how it didn't go the way I had pictured it. It just made me realize how much work I have to do, and how far I need to go, and that looking back, I think that'll always stick with me as kind of a moment where I realized how much I wanted to change.
I think it's so important, and that you're both sharing, is that the importance of self-awareness. The church fathers within the Orthodox Church tradition, for those of you that may not be part of the Orthodox Church, and we talk about this phrase "gnotis avton." Means to constantly study yourself. And I'm so impressed, but also happy to hear how both of you, and I'm sure that Deanna will agree to this as well in her comments in a few moments. But how proud I am that you guys have that self-awareness that yes, we are all broken people. We are going to a spiritual hospital, as St. Basil calls the church, and that we're all in some way, shape, or form have our own struggles, our own sicknesses. But that awareness actually has become the motivator for change. Because for a lot of people, especially when you're independent, you're out on your own, you've got a level of freedom that you didn't have when you were living with your parents. Sometimes during that freedom, there's a natural tendency to kind of, go off the ranch, if you will, to find other things to satisfy you, to find other ways to kind of to fill a hole that, as C.S. Lewis says, that only God can fill. And I'm just wanted you to know how happy, and I'm sure our listeners feel the same way, is just how important you both have shared how having Christ and having that awareness of myself and what I need, and that only Christ can fill that, having that awareness is really what's helping to shape your own walk of faith, and ultimately allow you to help make a difference in this world and in the lives of the people that are around you as well. Deanna, I know that you probably feel the same way, but I'd love to just hear your own comments. Was there a moment in your own walk of faith that helped during this transition that really inspired you, or kind of transitioned you into a deeper walk, deeper into the pool of faith, if you will?
Yeah, I don't think there was really a defining moment in my young adult years. I think before I entered young adulthood, I had experiences that helped me grow and realize the importance of my faith, which I think was so helpful as I went through all of these transitions. But kind of a general process or thing that helped me recognize the importance of it was seeing at my work, especially, just how people acted in certain ways or had beliefs that weren't in line with my faith. And it forced me to make a decision of, am I going to go along with this? Am I going to act this way, or am I going to stay true in who I am and what my church is telling me to do, which is really hard because I care about my career. I want to get ahead in the company. But I think just recognizing that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What matters is my salvation and the kingdom, my goal of getting to the kingdom. And so I think that just helped me recognize that no matter what happens now or in my career, I'm just going to stay true to who I am, and that will have to be enough. And I can still do God's work in my job, and that it's going to be okay. So I think that experience just really helped me and forced me to make that decision to stay strong and prioritize my faith.
I love that. You're listening to Live with the Louhs. We are speaking tonight with three amazing young adults from all over the country about transitions. How do young adults transition from the different stages that they experience, from graduating high school to graduating college to even just graduating high school and not going to college? And how do we navigate from there to a workplace, to just the normal anxieties, struggles, and worries that many young adults face? How do we deal with that? How do they deal with it? And what can we as a church find ways to better meet their needs? And so we've been speaking with Jamie, Deanna, and Lucas, and we're so grateful that they're with us this evening. And we invite you to join the conversation. We invite you to call in at 1-855-237-2346. 1-855-237-2346. You can also email us a question at ask@ancientfaith.com. That's ask@ancientfaith.com. And you can also join us on our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, and you can just simply put in a comment there. I wanted to ask all of you, amongst the three of you, did you guys go to any type of camp when you were in high school? And if so, how beneficial do you think that was for you? We'll start with Jamie. If you don't mind, Jamie, you can go first.
Yes, I did grow up going to a camp. Here in the Twin Cities, we have a camp called St. Mary's Camp, and it's run through our Greek church, but they open it up to our whole Pan-Orthodox community. And it really made a big impact, I would say, on my life, especially at being Pan-Orthodox, which for those that don't know means cross-jurisdiction. So Greek, Russian, Antiochian, anyone is welcome at this camp. And it kind of showed that the faith transcends culture, and that we could all gather together. And I made friends that I still to this day keep up with. So it was a big blessing in my life.
Awesome. And Deanna?
Yeah, I attended the same camp as Jamie growing up, and I completely agree. It made a huge difference for me. And looking back on it, it's hard to know exactly what part of camp it was. I just know that I came back one year and I recognized, okay, I want to go to church because I want to, not just because my parents are making me go every Sunday. And I think what it might have been was just how I felt there, how at peace I was, and how at peace my counselors or the nuns that would come and speak to us, or the priests, and just that feeling doesn't always exist in the outside world, but it did in our little Orthodox bubble that we created there. That felt so good.
And Lucas?
Yeah, it's funny. I was a stubborn kid, and I never went to any sort of church-related camp. I wish I had, and I've gone back many times as an adult on staff, but never as a camper. I wish I had. I did go to a couple summer camps that were more academic focused, and I think that those any experience where you're getting out of your daily routine and you're sort of taking a retreat and having to hit the reset button can be very beneficial. But I wish I had participated in one of those church camps, but I was just too stubborn. I wish I had.
Well, I think that I think there's so much to be said about having a camp experience in the community among so many benefits of camp. I think the community, the friendships that are created, the faith that's developed, definitely something that I would encourage all of our listeners, if you have children that are within the age groups of camp, more the 12 to 18-year-olds, definitely have them look into going to the camps that are provided within the Orthodox Christian Church. Lucas, Deanna, and Jamie, I think that, in the real world, I should maybe qualify that, but, I guess, for a lot of people that may be tuning into our show, they may not have had a camp experience. They may not have had even gone there as a counselor. They may have not. They're as young adults, they may have not been engaged in a church that really inspired them or motivated them in their walk of faith. Maybe they were disconnected. They may have gone off to college and they're not. Maybe they were influenced in a negative way. Listen to this email that just came in. It's from a parent. She simply says this: Father Nicholas, thank you for having a show on this very important topic. I am a parent of 2 young women who have just graduated college and are moving back home. How can I help them stay close to their faith and the church? Although they attended Orthodox churches while they were away, I feel that they were negatively influenced by so many other factors that surrounded them. And so, Deanna, how would you talk to this parent? What would you share with her?
I would say that being an example can be really powerful, especially if they're home living with this parent, and just trying to bring orthodoxy in whenever you can, again, in a non-judgmental way and in a gentle way, right? I think it's such a hard balance to not force it, but to also have it be there, have it be present.
Mm-hmm. Lucas, what would your thoughts be? What would you share with this parent?
My thoughts jump exactly where Deanna's jumped, which is being an example. I think is the most powerful thing that you can do. I think at that age, when we're in our 20s, we're all trying to be independent. Everyone's trying to be independent, and so there's not much you can tell them to do. But I think that if they have examples in their life of people who truly have joy from their faith, then that will speak to them.
And Jamie?
There's really not, I don't think, much more that I would add. My thoughts went to the exact same place, not forcing it or saying, why didn't you come to church? It's love speaks so much louder than anything else, truth, but, speaking the truth in love, I think is the name of one of the podcasts on ancient faith. And I think that just having an action or an example in their life, like both of them said, is so important.
Yeah, and I would just add to that to the parent. I would just encourage them that not only it's also knowing that example, what that example should look like, and as long as you continue to dive deeper into the pool of your walk of faith, I think that will also be inspirational. Because as long as as our guests have been sharing so beautifully, is when they see you, not only just simply modeling that, but also growing in your faith, that you're going to church, that you're before dinner reading a Bible verse or praying, that kind of witness. Our young, you have to know that young adults, our brains are still developing up until the age of 25. Research has shown recently, and so because our brains are still molding at that time, there's still opportunities for us to create new neural pathways, new highways, as they're called in psychology, new highways that can connect and to develop in that person. So don't do where we're forcing something on someone, but at the same time also just continue to grow in your walk of faith, because by your witness, as the Bible talks about, they will know that you're my disciples by the way you love one another, by the fact that your love in Christ and your love in them and your growth in Christ will continue to inspire them also in their walk of faith. Here's another question that came. I'm sorry, go ahead.
It would be okay if I added one more thing. This is Jamie.
Yes, Jamie, please go ahead.
So as I was thinking about it, I was just thinking about something my mom would say oftentimes. And my dad, really, I'm oftentimes thinking about what I can do, the actions I can take. And I'm often forgetting that it's so important to pray about these things. I know both of my parents are praying for me all the time, and I'm sure that has had an impact on my life. And so just encouraging this mother to pray. And it's definitely something I should take my own advice and pray about the things in my life. But just praying for her kids every day, I think, can have a bigger impact than it's easy to forget this. So just wanted to add that in.
Great advice, Jamie. Thank you so much. Here's another email question that just came in. It said, what would the three of you say to students who are entering college on how to maintain their faith? What bits of advice would you give them? So, Lucas, let's start with you. What would be advice that you would give to a freshman who's entering college? What kind of advice would you give them in their walk of faith? What to prepare for? Just words of encouragement for them.
Sure. I would say always be in the Gospels. And I wish I had followed that advice right away when I got to college. But I think the sooner I did, the better it was for my health. It just it gave me, answers to all my issues. And so if you can, read the Gospels daily, and I'll start with that. And I'd love to hear what Jamie and Deanna think.
Mm-hmm. Jamie, go ahead.
I would say two short things. The first would be if you're just beginning college, I think starting out, how you start your college career will likely be how you end it. So getting on a good routine of going to church if possible. And if that's not possible, finding something special you can do on a Sunday morning or speak with your spiritual father. But I think that those first, couple months and the routine you set will impact the rest of your experience. Not that you can't get on a new path if you didn't start that way, but I would definitely encourage that. And then I think the second would be just try not to worry so much what other people think of you and the fact that you're going to church or whatever you're doing. It's very easy to just think about what other people are thinking. And I would say that's something I'm really working on, but it will really, I think, set you free if you do what you think is right and what you want to grow in, and not what you think other people think is cool or what they think of you.
That's such great advice for all of us. I think we become so much of a people pleaser as opposed to a God pleaser, and I think that's important for all of us to hear. Deanna, what would you add to that as well?
Jamie actually touched on my two pieces of advice that I was thinking of as well. I think especially because when we're starting college, it's so stressful. I didn't have any friends when I was starting college, didn't know anyone, and so that social piece was so big. But to, again, prioritize the church. And then I think time is such a challenging thing in college. We're so busy. We're staying up late doing homework. So to prioritize going to church and going to church-related events, I think, is another piece of advice I would give, just because it may feel like I don't have time or I'll be too tired if I wake up early for church, but that it actually helps you feel better. It, again, fills your cup. It energizes you, and it doesn't have to take that much time, right? You can go for 2 hours quick and come home and get back to studying or whatever it is that you need to do. So really prioritizing it, even if it doesn't feel like there's time for it.
Great advice. I think the only thing I would add is just, and kind of building what you were just sharing, Deanna, is the importance of just setting clear goals for yourself. And we call these the goal of fives, that where do you want to be in your walk of faith in 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years? And being purposeful about that. And I love how you were sharing, Deanna, about prioritizing. So just like you'd have a class, I would put a schedule, a prayer. Because, there's an old adage that we oftentimes share at our retreats, and it says, show me your iPhone or show me your phone and I'll show you your life. In other words, show me your calendar and I'll show you what you prioritize. And so make sure that every single day, like there's a little ring that goes on your little phone that says, hey, it's time for us to pray. It's time for us to read the Bible verse. And there's so many great Bible apps that are out there, as well as within the church on the Go Arch website, that have your daily readings. But just be very purposeful and intentional about the goal of fives. Where do I want to see myself? Because as the Bible says, without a vision, the people kind of lose their way. So I love the advice that you were giving to all of to the emailer guys. So thanks so much for that. Again, you're listening to Live with the Louhs, and today we're talking with three amazing young adults who are from all over the country. They're talking about really the transitions that young adults go through, and really, and more importantly, is how do they carry their faith through these different transitions? They've been amazing, and we just invite you, if you have a question or you'd like to do an email, send us an email like the previous two. Please go ahead and do so at ask@ancientfaith.com. That's ask@ancientfaith.com. You can also phone call us. Call us right now at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-237-2346. A question I had for all of you is, was there a person that you found during your journey to be especially helpful? Maybe it was a priest or a friend or a family member that helped to shape you in your walk of faith. And I'd like to start with Jamie.
So many people. I'm very blessed. But I think both of my parents, they're about as different as two people can be in life. But the one thing that they have in common and have my whole life is their faith. They show me different aspects of the faith. My dad is this sturdy, attends church regularly, prays regularly, reads his Bible, is so repentant. And my mom is so wise. She tells me the hard things that I need to hear that maybe no one else would tell me, and that helped me grow in my faith. And so very blessed to have them both, and so many others in my life. But I hope others can have someone that can be there for them like I have that.
Excellent. And Lucas?
I would say two people come to mind. One of them is my grandfather. He certainly taught me everything I know, and he never pushed it upon me. I'll always be grateful that he made me ask him. He almost made me beg him to really speak to me about his faith and how he has the faith he has. And the second person that comes to mind is, it's really just those friends in life who love you unconditionally. And there's a particular family who I've known my whole life, and I think back to my interactions with them and how I was not a worthy friend, and I'm still not, but that they loved me throughout regardless. And that's the kind of person who inspired me to try to be better and to try to be just more Christ-like. Is that unconditional love.
Excellent. And Deanna, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Was there a person that really, I'm sure there are many, but was there someone that just immediately comes to your mind that really inspired you in your walk of faith?
Yeah, there have been a lot of people, but my parents also came to mind because Orthodoxy has always been important to them, and they live their Orthodoxy in a way that's not as overt as it might be for other people. They're not always talking about scripture or talking about deep theological concepts, but they're just living out the faith, and they're showing how they prioritize other people or care for others, volunteer. They prioritize the church, right? Volunteering their time and energy into church ministries. And I think having that as an example, and again, how much joy they get from it, even though it can be hard and stressful sometimes, just really encouraged me to do the same.
Absolutely. I know in my own walk of faith, I remember growing up, my grandmother was one of those people that, she didn't know the Bible backwards and forwards. She didn't know how to quote tons of Bible verses, but what she did do is she taught me what it meant to pray, and helped to shape me in my adolescence and in my young adult years in my own walk of faith. So I love how God places these people, if we're willing to listen and to allow them to enter our lives, people that God puts in our hearts and in our lives that help to shape us and who we are today. Lucas, I want to ask a question to you. I know that in any type of journey, there's always people, as we've been talking about, that help to shape that journey. Was there anything that you did to connect yourself and bring yourself closer to your faith during the transitions of life as in your adolescence?
Certainly, I think the first things that come to mind would firstly be monasteries. I made a few pilgrimages to both monasteries overseas, and then also we have some beautiful monasteries in the United States, especially being from Texas. We have St. Pataskevy and Holy Archangels, and those were transformative for me. And then second would be the retreats and conferences that are offered, specifically geared towards young adults. We've had sort of a recent surge, I think, in retreats and conferences. I had the opportunity of attending the Connect conference twice, and then hosting it last year in Dallas. And that's been a tremendous opportunity for me personally. I think to be able to retreat from the daily working life and spend just a weekend, or whether it's 2 or 3 days, listening to people like yourself, Father Nick, and I've had the pleasure of hearing you and Dr. Roxanne speak in person. Just people who have lots of experience and then perspective on mental and spiritual life. That's something I value greatly, and it's been, I'd say, essential for my years as a young adult.
I think that what you're touching on is so important, and I really want our listeners to listen to this. In addition to your own, day-to-day lives that we all live, whether it be you're in college, whether you're transitioning out of college into your work world, so it's so important to be in community. And one of the things I really like about what Lucas is just kind of sharing with all of us is this particular young adult conference. It's called the Connect Conference. You can actually go right now as you're listening to this show, go to connectorthodox.org. That's their website, connectorthodox.org. This is a young adult conference. I've actually spoken to it when at its inaugural conference several years ago, and then we're doing it again this year. It is a conference that I speak very highly of and I enjoy. I think that the way it's prepared, the balance between growing in your walk of faith, but also building, as we've been talking about, this community during transitional times, is essential. And so if you're looking to attend this conference, you can find out more. It's connectorthodox.org. It's September 30th through October 2nd in Atlanta, Georgia. I will be there, and so hopefully that you'll encourage your young adults. This is open to all young adults, by the way, but it's September 30th through October 2nd. This conference, by the way, will probably sell out. So if you are interested in it, please definitely go to their website. You can find, like I said, all the details. I'm not too sure if the registration has opened yet or not, but I would be if it's not, I can assure you that it will be very soon, that it will be, and just encourage you all to do that. But I think the same thing also, for you, Deanna and Jamie. I know that I guess both of you have also been involved or at least attended these Connect conferences. Tell our listeners just the benefit, not just of the specific Connect conference, but really what takes place at these young adult conferences that are so beneficial to you in your walk of faith. We'll start with Jamie or Deanna.
Go for it, Deanna.
I think what benefits me the most going to these conferences is just how refreshed I feel coming back from it. Having an opportunity to be surrounded and just immersed in orthodoxy and people who have my same faith. It's kind of like a restart button, just like Lent is meant to be. It's another opportunity to step away, to slow down from my busy life, hear amazing speakers, and to take in what they're saying and figure out ways I can apply it. And then I go back to my normal life, and I have more tools and just a refreshed mindset ready to get back at everything.
Absolutely. And I think all of us need that renewal, that rejuvenation, that restart. And Jamie, I mean, your thoughts as well. You've attended conferences as well. Tell us a little bit about how they motivate you.
Yeah, I've attended Connect 2 times and other conferences as well. And I think what I found really, special about Connect is that there's time there for you you listen to the speakers, and then there's time for you to talk with the other attendees about your impressions and things you think, and really process some of these things with other people that are also walking their walk of faith. And you meet people from all over the country and different, some are recently Orthodox, some have been Orthodox their whole life, some aren't Orthodox yet, and it just broadens your view, I think, of Orthodoxy. And I really encourage people that haven't had the opportunity to attend something like Connect, to attend Connect or something similar, because it can be a great thing for your faith, like Deanna said, to refresh you and get you ready for what's to come in that year following it.
Absolutely. Just want to remind our listeners that if you're interested in receiving one of our daily inspirational messages, we send out daily messages every single day. And they cover a vast array of topics that all, again, merge faith and psychology together. You can go to our website right now at thelouhs.com. That's LOUHS.com. Click on that subscribe button and simply just put your email address in, and every single day you'll receive at 7 a.m. Eastern time just a word of encouragement that we hope is helpful to you. And if you are already receiving those messages and you find them helpful, do us a favor, just please share them with your friends. Invite them to also join and receive our daily messages every day. In the waning moments of our show tonight, I wanted to ask all three of you, we know that these are not the only transitions that all of you are going to face. I mean, we're constantly facing change. The Bible talks about that there's seasons to these changes that we experience. And so knowing that, yes, you've experienced already some, but you have still many to go ahead in your life, what would you say to those who are listening, especially to the young adults that are listening, what would you say is the biggest helpful takeaway from your experiences that will carry you forward to the next transitions that you face in your life? And let's start with that, Deanna, this time.
The biggest takeaway has really been that no matter what, if I have my faith, I can get through any stressor, any problem that I'm going to face. I've seen that happen in the past, and I've heard people speak to even in a marriage, right? I'm not married, but if I am someday, they've really spoken to if Christ is at the center and you're both looking in that direction, you can get through anything and work together toward that. Because again, what matters isn't what's happening here. It's about your spiritual journey and trying to reach salvation, and that I can turn to my faith and my support people for comfort, and that I can really get through anything with that.
Love that. And Jamie?
I think one thing that I'm going to keep in mind is trying to be content with where I am in life right now. I think this is easier said than done, but what I've noticed for both myself and my friends is that most people aren't really living in the present. People that are single want to be married. People that are married want a bigger house or a child. People that are older want to be younger. And so I think just from keeping that in mind, that we meet Christ in the present, and we just have to continue to I think I have to remind myself that I am where I am now, both in life stage and also in my spiritual life. Have compassion on myself that I will continue to grow, and it's okay that there are things right now that I'm still struggling with. I will always have that. If I keep Christ, at the center, that's the key.
I love that. That's such wise advice, Jamie. Thank you. And Lucas, what would be some helpful advice that you're going to take away as you continue to face transitions in your own life?
That was beautiful advice from both Dan and Jamie. But I think that I struggle to do this. But what I try to take away is try to do things that are pleasing to God, and then when things don't go the way that I plan, just trust that it's in His hands. Trust that His plan is better than mine, and because that will happen. It happens over and over again, and just trying to maintain complete faith that his plan is better than whatever I'm thinking of.
I love that. I love how all of you are sharing just how important it is to be in your faith. And, just in the last few moments of our show, I think maybe I'd love to just ask all of you if there was just and maybe just, we may just only have time for two of you, but Deanna and Lucas, I'd like to ask you both, but, if there's a parent that's just, tuning in, their children may be a couple years from graduating high school, and they're listening to the show and they're thinking, okay, what can I be doing now, even before the major transitions that kind of take place in life? What would be some advice that you would give them? And let's ask Deanna first, and then we'll follow up with Lucas.
I would say talking with them about where they're at in the faith, if it's not something you're talking about already, seeing again if they have questions or if there's things that we could do together as a family while you're here to grow stronger in the faith and to solidify that now, to build in those habits for when that transition comes. And then depending how close they are to moving out of the home, helping with logistics of how they can stay connected with the faith. I know when I was in college, I was blessed to have people who were willing to give me rides, but there were some Sundays when I couldn't get a ride and I felt embarrassed to ask. And I mean, that's another piece of advice I'd give for, the young adults themselves, is to not be afraid there are so many people that are going to want to help you stay connected with your faith, but for the parent to really talk with them and help them get through any barrier that might get in the way of them staying connected with the faith.
I love that. And Lucas?
I love the question because my parents are still have one more child at home who's a couple of years away from graduating high school. I would say that, if there's a parent listening to your show, Father Nick, they're probably doing all the right things already. And my advice would be, let them make mistakes, because I think that we have a tendency as we watch our children or in my case younger siblings, we want to prevent them from being in any sort of situation where they're going to really mess up, and they have to make their own mistakes, because if they don't make them now, they're going to make them later in life. If they feel restricted now, then once they do finally have that autonomy, which they will have sooner or later, then they might make bigger mistakes. And so I would say stay involved, keep your relationship with them. And then I guess the only other piece of advice that comes to mind is I believe it was St. John Chrysostom, when a mother went to him and was saying, what am I going to do about my kid? What am I doing with my kid? And he said, show me your knees. And that line has always stuck with me, which is, you're not always going to be able to help them through every single interaction decision they're going to have, but pray for them all the time. So that those words, I'll try to always remember those.
I love that. I think that's so helpful. I think it's so beneficial for us to have a show that really has the young adults speaking for themselves. I wish I was still a young adult, but those days are past. But to have you three, Jamie, Deanna, and Lucas, sharing with our listeners from a young adult perspective, how do we inspire, motivate, how do we encourage our young adults? How do we help them transition the transitions that so many of them face in life? And hearing it through firsthand accounts from all of you has been so helpful. So I want to thank you, all three of you, Jamie, Zane, Deanna Colas, and Lucas Pistolos. Thank you so much for being on Live with the Louhs. We're grateful that you are that you're taking the time to be with us, and want to encourage all of you, check out this Connect conference. Again, it's connectorthodox.org. It's a great conference that if you're children or if you're a young adult, if you're looking for a place that builds community, that helps you, that was going to help you grow in your walk of faith. I'm speaking at it this year, not because I'm going to be there, but I definitely believe in it, and that's why we're speaking at it. Would definitely encourage you all to definitely be part of it. You can find out all the information you want, again, at that website, connectorthodox.org. And in our waning moments, I just want to kind of share with all of you that are young adults that may be listening and really this is advice that I would share with all of us, is continue to get closer to Christ. The Bible says that when we draw close to Christ, he draws closer. So if you think you're close to Christ, go even closer. Get deeper in the pool of faith. I would encourage you also to make sure that you're surrounded by people that make you better, that help to bring out the version of Christ that he yearns in you. And also, finally, is continue to be an example. People will learn more about who you are and what you believe, not about how many Bible verses you know, or how often you're able to sing a song that's from church, but how you live your life. So be careful how you're living your life, and make sure that you know that you're representing our Savior. We want to thank Matushka Trudy for producing tonight's show, as she does such an amazing job every single time, as well as all the people at Ancient Faith. We also, once again, invite you to join our daily inspirational messages by going to thelouhs.com and clicking on that subscribe button. Next Tuesday, June 20th, we'll be speaking with a dear friend of ours, Alyssa Karitzis, who's the Metropolis of Pittsburgh Youth and Young Adult Director, on how do we bring our children, especially in the summertime, how do we keep them connected to the church? We definitely want you all to be there. So that's next Tuesday, June 28th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. God bless you, my dear friends, and stay strong in your walk of faith.
Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne are the authors of the book Renewing You, a priest, a psychologist, and a plan, which can be purchased at store.ancientfaith.com. Their daily inspirational messages can be found at thelouhs.com/subscribe. Be sure also to search for The Louhs on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Live with the Louhs is a listener-supported presentation of Ancient Faith Radio.
Are you curious about the Orthodox Christian faith?
Do you have questions about Orthodox Christianity that you can't trust strangers in internet forums